Well, I'm just gonna get right into it. Today we are talking about the Gen Z final girl and what that may look like. So the trope of the final girl has been seen in media for generations at this point. It often refers to the last living girl in the movie. When looking at this trope, it was a manifestation of what was valued in women at the time. But in this day and age, it seems like there's a variety of character traits that makes a female character more beloved or iconic. And what I'm exploring in this video is, does that possibly leave room for there to be a more modern take for the final girl? So it's important for me to share what made me make this video in the first place, and it was none other than the movie series, really, X. So spoilers ahead if you haven't watched those movies. Throughout the movie X, we expect to see Jenna Ortega to be our final girl, as she is presumed to be the more demure and virginal girl in the series. But this idea is soon turned on its head as she breaks one of the cardinal sins of horror movies by participating in the pornography. From then on, it's unsure to the audience who would survive this violent encounter with Pearl and her husband, and surprisingly enough, it's Maxine, a girl who's far from what we usually imagine as the final girl. She's vain, promiscuous, feminine, and funnily enough, by the end of the movie, we found that Shorty was raised in a church. Had she stayed on that path, she would probably look more like the traditional final girl that we're used to. Or not, because I've heard preachers' kids be wildin'.
Preacher's daughter my ass, baby!
Not to mention, Maxine is, we find out in the last installment of the series, Maxine is like 30, which is not old, but horror movies tend to be at adolescence game for the most part. It's usually teenagers and very young adults that we see in these series. It would actually make more sense to me if characters like Maxine were the final character more often, because she was a sex worker, and sex workers tend to lead pretty traumatizing lives. They can probably real life relate to some of these slashers. They probably did have a man come up and try and kill them. They probably do have to live like Laurie Strode got a Mike Myers obsessed with them, trying to break into their house, stalking them, all that shit. Michael Myers and Jason don't got shit on these hoes. The author Carol J. Clover is credited with coining the term the final girl in her 1992 book Men, Women, and Chainsaws: Gender in the Modern Horror Film. At some point, she states that in the early stages of horror, spectators knew what the film would do, even down to the order it would dispose of its characters, and that this predictability was a source of pleasure, not boredom. I guess horror movie buffs liked cracking the formula. That being said, after reading just a sample of the book, I really had to think about how I was going to incorporate it into this video, because the book primarily defines itself as, and I quote, a book that explores the relationship of the majority viewer, parentheses the younger male, to the female victim heroes who have become a conspicuous screen presence in certain sectors of horror. Conspicuous. Some caveats about the work. It was published in the 90s, so any horror 2000 and up is not being considered, unfortunately. Key things that I wanted to point out from the book is that she does credit Psycho as starting the formula of sexually active victims with very violent deaths, and movies like Texas Chainsaw and Halloween continuing this formula. She notes that final girls were made to relate to both genders by being resilient and representing empowerment, being heroic, all of which are traits considered masculine. Though even in reading this, I still didn't understand why a rejection of sexual promiscuity was needed to help the female character relate to male audiences, or why they felt it was needed to make that relation. Maybe it was seen as a sort of masculine strength to be sexually disciplined, or maybe it was male audiences not being able to relate to a character that was ultimately put there to be eye candy, which is more than likely. The author goes on to note how several films at the time, including Carrie, framed female bodies and sexuality as scary, anxiety-inducing, stressful, and as well as occult films often using women as some sort of vessel for whatever spirit is about to haunt them. Notably, this happens in The Exorcist and Witchboard, which she points that happens in Witchboard. I don't know what Witchboard is. There are plenty of horror movies I haven't seen, and yet I am still making this video. Though I will say the Alien series will answer for their crimes. They make pregnancy look horrifying, which I guess it technically is, but they don't need to add on to that trauma. It's something about them in pregnancy. They keep messing with it. Why? I guess femininity, in horror at least, is associated with emotion, chaos, being out of control. In a way, you could just chalk it up to conservatism, but if we're talking about the 80s, I thought they were some freaks. I don't know. And all of this was just used to establish the sort of relationship that horror movies at the time had with their audience, and why certain, I guess, formulas were established in the first place, and what gender had to do with that. As previously mentioned, usually the final girl is a cis woman, a virgin, or at least not having any on-screen relations.
The virgin. Me. Virgin. We work with what we have.
Not usually participating in any illicit drug, and they'll usually be smart and resourceful, which I guess is why they throw the book smart girlies into there, because I guess they're expected to be more resourceful and able to handle the killer. But I'm telling you, the Maxines, they got it. It's worth deconstructing why these were the primary traits in said final girl. And to summarize a lot of what I found, it boiled down to a lot of these iconic movies being made in the 80s by white men to a predominantly white male audience. Why were they female? Why were they virginal? And it was because women just more easily gained sympathies from these audiences, especially with their behaviors catering towards a conservative audience. While the more objectified, promiscuous women were there more so as eye candy, so a prop or an object, usually enduring a brutal death as they were being punished for their promiscuous behaviors. Why was the girl cis, which was, I guess, just a reflection of the times. We didn't have as many trans characters. Are there any trans final girls like today? The closest example I can think of is Queena from Alice in Borderland, but put in the comments if there's more. Why were they white? We know why they were white. Considering how many other tropes came out of this era, it just wasn't a surprise that many black characters did not make it to the end of the movie. A damn was not given. All of this was just to confirm and strengthen what we knew was happening during the time. When looking over the most popular slashers, most tend to play into this trope pretty directly, and probably played a big role in why this trope is even a thing. So we have the aforementioned Laurie Strode in Halloween, who pretty much set an early precedent for the trope. Friday the 13th always has a final girl, and they usually play straight into this trope. I think the only exception being Tommy Jarvis. Most of the survivors on the Nightmare on Elm Street, there was a male one, don't remember his name. And Texas Chainsaw Massacre tends to play into this trope pretty straight too. I don't even think they have a male survivor. They're strict. Do they have any black ones? No. They are in rural Texas. More creative names are a must. Like, I'm looking over some of these survivors. We have Jenny Aaron, Heather, Lee. Name somebody Zenopia or something. We need a little creativity, so maybe we'll remember them. Give them a last name or something. They probably do have last names, I just don't know it, but that's fine. Even in the most recent Alien installment, Alien Romulus, I had little hope anyone other than Rain would make it out of that spaceship. At least Andy did, but he wasn't a part of the human death count, so I guess that's our consolation prize. And I'm not saying that Rain is necessarily book smart or virginal, but she wasn't the pregnant one. Not to mention that series got a thing for a white brunette making it to the end of the movie. That is a whole other topic. They're really strict. And that's not to say that there weren't final girls that fit outside the box at the time. One of the first horror movies ever made was Black Christmas in 1974, and the final girl was Jessica Bradford, who is pregnant and wants an abortion. So off rip, she's not virginal, and she's even a little controversial with the whole abortion talk, at least for the times. Well, these times too now. The first to die is Claire, who fits more into the box that trope created. I don't know of any more examples of this trope subversion pre-2000s, but if y'all know any, let me know, because there are so many horror movies out there, and my primary focus was pre-2000s American, but I'm sure there's plenty of more that are foreign or just out there that I just have not seen. So who else subverted this trope? First and foremost, Scream, 2001. Scream had Sydney sleeping with the killer. of all people. But Scream also at the time set out to be a parody of past slashers, so they were purposely trying to be different. And I have a bias. Alexa from Alien vs Predator. Yep. I don't care if that movie's not canon. I'm counting it.
I'm rooting for everybody black.
And just because any black person that survives a horror movie, they fell outside the box for me. Like, all immediately. Raw Digger, all of them. Besides, Sanaa Lathan basically survived 2 horror movies. She's a scream queen. Give that girl her flowers. And just to give a few more examples, Amanda Young in Saw, because she was a whole drug addict. Ended up working with the killer later down the line. And then Margot Mills in The Menu. And probably plenty of more, but this is off rip. Kinda wrote this down. So now we've established that in modern times, it's more often that the final girls are fitting outside the box, which is likely just the producers, directors, and writers taking in consideration a larger audience. A change in times, creativity. Now, this is where I get closer to my point. So, when focusing on breakout characters for movies and media geared towards girls, there is a pattern on who tends to be the breakout star. A few examples being Jennifer from Jennifer's Body, Maddie Perez from Euphoria, Regina George from Mean Girls, and Heather from Total Drama. So I measured each of their popularities purely based on how many hashtags their names had on TikTok. So in comparison to the other characters in their show. So whoever's got the edit got the credit. And I'll say right now, I never watched an episode of Gossip Girl, but I do know who Blair Waldorf is. And that alone makes her the breakout star. Now, I really do believe Gen Z specifically has an affinity for this type of character. And that's just to say, like, Jennifer's Body, when it first came out, it did not do well in theaters. They said that, I guess the audience maybe were expecting one thing and got another, but every 9-year-old ate that up. That movie is such a cultural staple today. Same thing with Catwoman in 2004. I vaguely remember a tweet from Halle Berry talking about, you know, she wondered where all the praise was coming from because that movie did not get the amount of praise it did back in 2004. And someone literally went and commented under that saying, we were like 8. So yeah, Gen Z, specifically that group, has a type. Based off the previous statements, it seems certain traits that make a character iconic in female audience eyes is a woman who's confident, charismatic, maybe a bit manipulative. It's possible that femme fatales are also favored, so someone who is willing and able to use their sexuality to get what they want. Most of the women I use as an example fell into a sort of queen bee archetype, and I can't say it would not be interesting to see a Regina George type as a final girl. Now, there still is the question of if this sort of character can relate to male audiences as well, and I don't see why not if they look good. And the character wouldn't necessarily have to be cis to pull this off. There are lots of men who even prefer to main women in video games because they don't want a man grunting in their ear all day or something along the lines. That's something I've heard in the ether. A good example of a queen bee archetype being a final girl is Emily from Until Dawn. Now, every character in Until Dawn has the possibility of being a final girl or final boy, but there is an argument of how essential Emily was in that game for the group to even understand what was happening to them, because she's the one who endured the mines and encountered the Wendigo and was able to put together what happened to Hannah and Beth. But Emily was not liked by players for a very long time. I know I didn't like Emily. I didn't try and kill her because there are a lot of opportunities to kill Emily, and some people took that opportunity. That was crazy. Some people actually, I remember back when that game first came out, some people purposely killed Emily. They shot her in the face with Mike. I never did that, okay? But with time, players did grow to appreciate her role, essentially. Interestingly enough, a lot of the little queen bee archetypes, even the ones that I mentioned, it took time for them to be loved. Like it in the moment, it was dicey, it was shaky, or at least they went through some redemption arc, maybe like Heather, but it was dicey. But looking back, like I said, whoever got the edit got the credit. And then there's Jessica too in the game, and Until Dawn at least, and Jessica had a pretty horrifying night. In the general audience, if Jessica survived, if they can keep her alive, they think that she deserves to live because she does. She went through a lot. Slashers and horrors are such traumatic situations that it begs the question, how morally ambiguous can a final girl be while still garnering sympathy? Can a final girl be downright villainous and still be seen in a certain light. Women in general media are usually not looked at as mean or malicious people, and that's why the final girl is a girl in the first place, because the audience already has some baseline sympathy for this character. But let's take a girl like Shauna Shipman. They can never make me like her, but I know she has her defenders. Let's go into Yellow Jackets for a quick bit. Let's say after the island situation, the girls find themselves in a slasher. I know, they've had enough, but here we are. And let's say Shauna is the lone survivor. How would you feel about that? Because it would definitely be bittersweet to me knowing that Natalie probably deserved to live. Or what if Misty is the last survivor? Knowing her, she might be able to pull it off. Just a thought. And usually at the end of these series, the final girl returns home severely traumatized, scared, maybe they'll become a prepper like Lori did. Hell, sometimes if they don't get them in the first movie, they out in the second. So I definitely have a huge appreciation for Sydney and Gail, who survived movie after movie after movie. I don't know if that's going to change in this upcoming Scream, but it better not. I think I would like to see more revenge movies, like of maybe like the character survival of a slasher horror, like a retaliation film. Like, just imagine if we got a sequel to Jennifer's Body and we followed Needy's journey, you know, to get back at that band. Like, I know Needy is not a traditional final girl herself. Well, in a way she is, but besides the sex. But hey, at least at the end of that movie, she got a superpower for all that grief and strife she went through. I understand revenge stories just aren't made more often because they tend to be sad. I definitely have a limit. Shit like I Spit on Your Grave that's not for me, because you do want these characters to like move on and heal, live their lives. I'd like to see maybe a revenge movie in very specific cases. Like, I'm talking the character's life got so uprooted by the situation that they can't even go back to that. They might as well go get revenge, like Rosalie from Twilight. She was a whole vampire now. Or Needy, who's like a demon now. I don't know what Needy is. Maybe she just got powers, maybe she's a demon, I'm not sure. Whatever. She was in a mental institution. Girl, go do what you gotta do. All this just to say is I look forward with this trope being played with, subverted, upverted, the whole 9 yards, and really seeing the ways it can be manipulated and altered without turning into something else completely. And that's the end of the video. That is the end of the topic that I'm talking about today. So now I'm going to introduce myself. Hi, for all intents and purposes, I am Bo. You didn't see that hand. Hi. Oh, hi. There we go. Hi, I am Bo for all intents and purposes. This channel is going to be whatever I want it to be. Sometimes there will be rants. Maybe there will be videos of me doing what I want. I do aim to be consistent, but I'm really just having fun with creation in general. As you can see, there are some gaming videos on my channel already. This is not that. I'm keeping those there because I had so much fun making them and doing it, but I'm not turning this into a gaming channel, if you get what I'm saying. There may be some gaming on here, like if I like a stream enough, I'll edit it, put it up here. But other than that, but I hope you enjoyed the video. I don't know what I'm doing next week, and I may or may not see you.